It's the end of the year, the end of the decade, and the end of my time in college, as you may have been able to tell by the fact that I recently released my animation final, Canned Food. There are a number of topics that I kind of want to touch upon as the year ends, but I think Canned Food is probably the one that I should cover first, because there's a story behind it, and that story dates back as far as me just getting out of high school and never wanting to think about school ever again. But my parents eventually convinced me to try the college that was pretty close to us. I was going to major in fine arts, and at first, my experience was alright. I was pleasantly surprised by how much more I could relate to my classmates than in high school, how many fewer hours I actually had to be at school. That seemed pretty nice, and I thought, this isn't going to be so bad. Now, I can tell you right now that my college experience was better than my high school one because my high school experience was pretty terrible, but my optimism did start to fade in my first semester because I was taking a 2D design class with a very strange professor. She sounded a lot like a whimsical cult leader at times. And prior to that class, I already had issues with overthinking art, but I believe it got a lot worse because of this class, and these ideas that were pushed upon us about how color theory works this way, composition of a frame works this way, you have to do things this way or that way because this is what the masters did, and you have to learn from the masters, and yada yada yada. Generally, I just felt less comfortable and more unsure of my artwork, which is something that I used to enjoy greatly. So I changed classes, I changed professors, and things got easier for me, but also a little too easy, because all the lessons I was taking were things that I really already knew, and there's not really a reason to go to college for a higher education if I'm not learning anything. So it was time for me to change my major, and I specifically decided not to major in game design, even though that's my passion, or actually really specifically because it's my passion, because I didn't want that ruined for me as well. So I went with animation as something that I enjoy, but it's not my number one priority. And evidently I didn't know what I was getting into with animation as my major, because I thought that various different kinds of animation, like traditional 2D, digital 2D, stop motion, and 3D, were all going to be kind of taught with equal focus and equal time. Instead, digital 2D, traditional 2D, and stop motion were all lumped into one class over the course of a few weeks, and every other course was working with various different elements of 3D, and it turns out I don't really like working with 3D very much, and that made my university years kind of a struggle. I seriously considered dropping out twice. But I stuck with it, and one of the things that kind of always kept me going was the knowledge that the last 2 semesters were going to be mainly focused on the final animation project, which theoretically could be whatever we wanted. It didn't even have to be 3D, although we were kind of pushed in the direction of 3D because that's what we've been learning about for so long. And I had a lot of strong feelings brewing within me about my college experience, and I wanted to get those out in the final project. I kept thinking of various different ways that I could present my feelings, and the idea that I settled on at the beginning of the semester was this 2D animated cat who lives in a house and eats a lot of food, finds this door that leads to a dimension of 3D shapes just kind of floating in the air. It's this vast void that's totally unfamiliar, and in sort of Super Paper Mario or Fez fashion, he travels through this 3D world as a 2D cat and gets into mischief because he isn't perceiving the world correctly. But in the end, he finds some 3D cat food and he brings it home, because at the time, the message that I wanted to tell was, college has been a struggle, but I still might be able to apply what I've learned here into other things. The majority of the first semester of this final seminar project course was critique of our concepts, and the concept that I presented was kind of at the mercy of what my professor and my classmates wanted to see. And I was kind of on board with a lot of the changes that they were telling me to make until by the end it really didn't feel like I had written my animation anymore. I wanted it to be really surreal and abstract, but all the surreal and abstract elements were removed. I wanted it to be kind of on the serious side, and it was nudged towards being a comedy. And whenever I was going into the animating process, the ending that I had agreed upon was one that my professor came up with, which was... Actually, I animated it, so I might as well just show you. I won't lie, it's a funny ending, but it's also just a very basic elevation joke, and that's not what I wanted from my final project for college. I wanted something that spoke from my passion, and I wanted something that would make people think, something that they would remember. So, all through the second semester, behind the scenes I was working on my own ending that nobody else knew about, that was more true to the kind of thing that I wanted to make originally. That's what I released earlier in the month, and that's the version of the animation that I showed on the last day of class. I expected everyone to hate it. I knew that the work that went into it would probably be appreciated, but I thought that everyone would think, oh, this is a disrespectful, poorly structured piece of work, and I don't agree with this. But as it turned out, it got a very positive reaction. Nobody expressed a single criticism, and my professor was in stunned silence for probably a solid minute after it was over until he finally said, "Why?" Which was the reaction I was expecting from him, but I left the room thinking, that went perfectly. It could not have gone better. Cut to the following day, when I'm just waking up from a nap and I'm feeling kind of groggy and I'm not fully dressed, and my dad knocks on my bedroom door and says, Jonathan? There are a couple of police officers from campus here to talk to you about something. And I thought, maybe this is something that they do for everybody? Maybe they're just doing a questionnaire for college graduates? I didn't really know what to expect. My animation was kind of in the back of my mind at that point, but I got dressed, I walked downstairs, and sure enough, there were two police officers, and they mentioned the video that I turned in the day before, and I thought, oh, this is gonna be awkward. So we sat down, and I was informed that most of my classmates were made uncomfortable by the content of the animation that I turned in, which felt like a slap in the face because I only heard positive things the day before. And here I was having to answer questions that I would have never expected to answer, like, do you intend to harm yourself or anyone else? Do you own any weapons or have ever used any weapons? It wasn't the most intense conversation. They told me afterwards, we got a concern, this is just something that we have to do, thank you for your time. But it was still weird. A few days after the year ended, there was this showcase for the short films made by the animation students, and I was told in an email that the newer version of my canned food animation was not going to be shown in the showcase because it made my classmates uncomfortable, and so they were going to show the old version instead, which I also turned in. I did not agree to this because I didn't spend all that time doubling the length of my animation for the old ending that I wasn't passionate about to be shown in the showcase. So I said, if you're not going to show the new one, then don't show either of them, and they respected that. But how wild is that? That I turned in something that effectively got censored. And actually, the head of the department said he thought it was really good. So I don't know, man. It's just a weird situation, but I think in a way, the whole process of working on that new ending and seeing the reaction being kind of mixed was both gratifying and a real learning experience for me. Because the majority of the new ending was made up as I went along. I kept coming up with ideas and having to pick and choose which ones I would actually animate because I didn't have all the time in the world. And I'm kind of used to making things and expecting them to have a positive response, because in my mind, I'm generally trying to make things that people would enjoy. But this was different. I had a totally different kind of excitement for canned food because I wasn't expecting people to like it. I didn't know what kind of response it would get, and of course, the response that it got was pretty unexpected. But there's something so magical about the uncertain, about the unknown. I think it might even be more exciting than making things I know people will love. So the fact that I couldn't use all of my ideas and I couldn't be a perfectionist, and the thrill I felt from not knowing what reaction I would get, both of those things are kind of a segue into the next thing I want to talk about, which is the game that I've been working on for 10 years and have made basically no progress because I have been trying too hard to get it perfect. I've been trying to plan everything out ahead of time. I've been trying to make it the best thing that I can. There comes a point when, if you're someone like me who's an independent artist who wants to stay true to their vision and not kind of let anyone else interfere, you can't make a AAA production. You can't necessarily do everything that's in your head exactly the way that it is in your head. But you can get the essence of it, and that's good enough. And sometimes it feels like, oh, well, why would I strive for good enough if I can go beyond? But good enough is good enough. It really is. It's good. I've been trying to apply this to my work over the past week or so, and I have made more progress on tile sets in the past week or so than I think I've made in the past 10 years, because I've put more limitations on myself, and I've recognized this won't be perfect and that's okay. A lot of these little things that I perceive as flaws or as less than I want them to be, nobody else is going to care. It's merely stress that I am inflicting upon myself needlessly. So far I'm doing pretty well, but just in case, one of my 2 New Year's resolutions is to utterly destroy my perfectionist habits. And I'm going to make progress on my game even though I don't know everything that's going to happen with it, because I will make it work somehow like I did with canned food. Lunging forward headfirst into the great unknown and filling in the blanks later is generally how I work best. My second New Year's resolution is less concrete. I don't know exactly how it's going to work, but I'm going to do my best. It's just to enjoy things more. I want to give less attention to the negativity and the criticisms surrounding the things that I love, because, as valid as those criticisms might be, I like to like things. And I have an easier time enjoying the things that I love when I don't feel like I'm wrong for doing so. People are going to like what they like and dislike what they dislike, and that's whatever. If at all possible, I want to rewire my brain to feel a little more of a childlike giddiness for things, like I see with some YouTubers whenever something happens in a game and they're like, "Oh, that's so cool!" You've seen it happen. I miss that feeling. It hasn't happened in a while, and I think I've been too critical, or at least too cynical, which is why it's a resolution for me to fix that. There is one more thing that I'll have to prepare for the coming year, but I don't really count it as a resolution because it's really not optional. It's something that I have to do, which is get a job. For many people my age, applying for and working at a job is something that they've already done. Maybe not for significant wages, but they at least have the experience. I don't. I've only ever earned any kind of income from some commissions and some ad revenue, which is hardly life-sustaining, and I've been lucky to not have to worry about the job world so much. But the flip side to that is I feel really unprepared to fully transition into being an adult. All the practices that surround the business world and having to worry about finances and all that, it's alien to me and it's scary. But I guess I did say there's something magical about the unknown. There's something to be said about not getting too comfortable. It's great to feel comfortable, but you still have to be prepared to step out of your comfort zone. Because you don't know what you're missing if you take life for granted. Now that covers all the serious stuff that I wanted to talk about, and I could end the video here, but I'm going to throw out one more thing just for fun. On the week of my graduation ceremony, which I didn't actually attend, I had family visiting and I went to my brother's house, he lives nearby. To celebrate my graduating, he set up this real-life game of Mario Party. He had these red and blue sort of numbered spaces all across the first floor of his house. He had this list of mini-games that he thought about. The best part was he made a womp to block the hallway, and in case you're in a different tab or doing something else, I have the picture of the womp on the screen right now. It fits perfectly in the door, and it's great. I kind of love it. I think that's everything, so thank you for listening. I wish you all very well in the new year and the new decade. Seize the unknown. Find things to be happy about, and take care.